Well, I'll just start with reciting some verses from Surah Taha, which is one of the surahs. There's two surahs where Prophet Musa alayhi salam's story is narrated most extensively. So I'll recite a few verses from there. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم طه ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن لتشقى إلا تذكرة لمن يخشى تنزيلا ممن خلق الأرض والسماوات العلى الرحمن على العرش استوى له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وما بينهما وما تحت الثرى وإن تجهر بالقول فإنه يعلم السر وأخفى الله لا إله إلا هو له الأسماء الحسنى وهل أتاك حديث موسى إذ رأى نارا فقال لأهلهم كثوا إني آنست نارا لعلي آتيكم منها بقبس أو أجد على النار هدى فلما أتاها نودي يا موسى إني أنا ربك فاخلعنا عليك إنك بالوادي المقدس طوى وأنا اخترتك فاستمع لما يوحى إنني أنا الله إنني أنا الله إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني وأقم الصلاة لذكري إن الساعة آتية أكاد أخفيها لتجزى كل نفس بما تسعى فلا يصدنك عنها من لا يؤمن بها واتبع هواه فتردى صدق الله العظيم. In my opinion, there's one verse in here that, to me, I don't know if it's appropriate to say so, but to me feels like the climax of the Quran, because it's Allah directly saying, indeed, I am Allah, and there is no God except me, so worship me and establish prayer to remember me. This is what he says to Musa alayhi salam directly. The only person in history, the only person in this world that Allah spoke directly to. This is Musa alayhi salam's unique distinction, right? وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا, as Allah says in the Quran, that Allah spoke to Musa alayhi salam in words, like directly in words. other prophets and messengers, including Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, got revelation. And now also some scholars, have differences of opinion when he went on Isra and Mi'raj, when he was in Allah's presence. Did he see Allah? Did he not? But still, that was in another realm. But in this world, only Musa alayhi salam spoke. Allah chose to speak to him, and this is how it went down, basically. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this story, He starts the story, and Allah is, as He says, Ahsan al-Qasas, Allah gives the best stories. He calls that to Surah Yusuf. But here, He starts this story, boom, with that climax, and then backs up and gives the whole story. Like that's, it's probably very powerful. Anyway, so we're not going to start there either. I mean, we're not going to go into the depths there and go there. We're going to back off and so forth. But I wanted to say that Musa alayhi salam, we hear his name so much, and we, maybe we reflect on it, maybe we don't. I know I don't reflect on it enough. But there are so many layers to Musa alayhi salam's story, so many chapters, so many things. I want to start just by asking, like, if I say, like, what are different key chapters or episodes? I don't want you to give the detail, but that come to mind when you say Musa alayhi salam. I bet you there's many that you're not even thinking of, and we start naming them, we're like, wow, there's nobody else that we hear from the companions, from the prophets, from so forth, that we get all these different, very different layers. So let me throw out there and say, if I were to say, what are key episodes or things in Musa alayhi salam, like what are some, to just give us a quick off the start appreciation for how richly Allah decided to share His story with us. Yeah?
His beloved brother Harun.
Yes, mashallah. That's my good friend Harun. So yes, but definitely they're brotherly. I didn't even think of that until you just said that. I mean, I know of, but the relationship of their brother is very interesting. In fact, actually, in hindsight, I do think I've been thinking about it. I have thought about it, but I didn't think about it in the prelude to this talk. But his relationship with his brother, because many times Musa alayhi salam is almost like, the undertone is like, Allah, why did you choose me? This is my older brother. He says, Huwa afsahu minni. He says, he's way more eloquent than me. Harun alayhi salam had this like way of speaking. He was knowledgeable. He looked the part, so to will, as Trump likes to say, from central casting. Astaghfirullah, sorry guys for mentioning him here. But that was Harun alayhi salam. He was older, he was recognized, he wasn't hot like Musa alayhi salam. Like sometimes you think like, okay, if someone's going to play a public role, you want him to be a bit more cool and collected. In his younger years, Musa alayhi salam, yeah, even in his later years, he could be hot. Musa alayhi salam could come in hot. But Harun alayhi, but then the relationship, yet Musa alayhi salam asked Allah, I can't do this without him. But anyway, well, I don't want to get too sidetracked. So Harun alayhi salam, but then Musa alayhi salam gets angry at him, and then how does Harun react alayhi salam, and all these things. So there is a lot to be unpacked and thought about there. And the sad thing is, in these two sessions, we're not going to unpack probably even 20% of all the things in Musa alayhi salam. So that Harun and his relationship with his brother. What else is there in Musa's story? Yeah? Suratul Kahf. Most people don't think about that. But that's almost like, it's almost like two different prophets, or two different things. It's like Musa alayhi salam, he's the main character, right? You think of it, you go to that, but then Khidr and so forth, and it's like, he's like the what do you call it, I don't know, what? Like, yeah, almost like the sidekick, or he's the protege. He's like kind of, but it's happening at a time when he's already a prophet. Like, and it's way esoteric. It's like, who's this guy? Who's Khidr? What? Allah leaves it intentionally full of mystery. Like, Al-Khidr, was he a man? Was he a prophet? Was he an angel? Did he really exist? Did he live a life as a human? Did he just come out, drop in, and go away? And in the tradition of ihsan and tazkiyah, and like what some people like to call the Sufi sciences, but really the sciences of tazkiyah, that story is rich. Like you can go deep and get lost in like, what does it mean? What are its inner meanings? What do all these things mean? And on the face of it, it seems to flout every like moral law, but there's like deeper meanings happening that boggles Musa alayhi salam's mind. So that whole story is just a world of its own. Yeah? What else is in Musa alayhi salam's story?
There's Surah Qasas.
The what?
Surah Qasas.
Surah Qasas has a lot of his story. But so what are some episodes of Musa alayhi salam's life? Yeah?
When Allah tells him to go to talk to Firawn,
Yeah.
and then Allah says, call it at the Alpha, and then he
Yeah, but he says to go talk to Pharaoh and Musa alayhi salam's, that's like out of nowhere, because he went off into the desert, into the Median, he fled, he was a fugitive, he had killed somebody, he was from the Israelites, he should be killed anyway, and then he's gone, and then he thought, okay, that's it, I'm retired from that whole crazy thing, and I'm off now. And he probably thinks his life, that's a whole thing done and left behind him. Now I'm getting mentored by this wonderful man who many scholars say is Prophet Shu'aib. He gets married, and now he's becoming this deeply spiritual person. Like he has this like heated past. Like he grew up in the lap of luxury, as the son of the Pharaoh, given everything. Like that's probably a part of why he was so physically strong also. His natural strength was able to come to its peak because he had the best of everything. Best education, best resources. He could have been like tyrant number one. He probably had some inner struggle with it. He had some, and maybe he wasn't used to controlling his temper because he didn't need to. He's growing up as the son of the Pharaoh because his wife says, and Pharaoh says, let's take him as a son. And then he does this thing and the whole thing blows him. So he's trying to like put that all behind him, and he thinks he has, and then suddenly he gets to this deeply, so he goes on like the Sufi path, like forget the world, I have nothing, I'm a shepherd, and I'm learning from this person, and then, but somehow he gets pulled back to that. Allah says, go back to Pharaoh, and he has this whole fear. But what I want to point out is also, Musa alayhi salam's story, what we read everywhere that I noticed only in this time reading these, is that he has a constant battle with fear. Because it's not just him, we all have a constant battle with fear. But Musa alayhi salam, which is interesting, is because he's known as someone who is fearless. Because he would be like, I'm not going to let the fear come, I'm just going to act before. Like his sense of justice, wanting to fix something that doesn't seem right, was so strong that he would react before his better sense could get a hold of him, but out of like righteous anger, if you will. So that's why it's weird that actually if you find many places, Musa alayhi salam says, I'm afraid. And Allah says, don't be afraid. Him and Harun then say, we're afraid. His mom says, we're afraid. The magicians say, we're not afraid, like we don't fear you, and then Firawn, Allah says, فَاسْتَخَفَّ قَوْمَهُ فَأَطَاعُوهُ. He sought to make his people afraid, and so they followed him. Like there seems to be a lot of something about, Allah is teaching us something about what is fear, what the role fear plays, what do you do about fear? Is fear something bad? But his prophet, he seems to, at whatever stage of his spiritual development it seems to be, he still seems to be afraid, have that feeling of fear from when he was young, because it says, like when he killed that man accidentally, and then the next day there's another situation where again someone is calling out for his help. It's the same guy actually. We'll talk about, I know I'm just jumping in and out, and maybe some people don't know the full context, so I apologize, we'll cover it better. But so the next day though, a person comes running and says they're looking for you, the mala, the elites, to kill you. And so then Musa is like, he says he's afraid, and he sneaks away afraid. But then after he thinks he's overcome all that, again, you're afraid. He throws the staff. He's afraid and he runs away without looking. Allah keeps using that word fear. And then he's in front of Musa. He thinks he's, Allah says, "La takhafa inni ma'akuma asma'u wa ara." Don't be afraid. I'm with you, and I'll be seeing and I'll be hearing everything that's happening. But then as soon as he throws it, فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً مُوسَى. But again, he still felt fear even when that thing is going down with the magicians and Pharaoh. So this fear, there's something about there to be kind of discussed and unpacked. And what do you mean by fear, and what type of, what do you do about fear, and is it a useful feeling? And other episodes from his life? Yeah?
Well, I was thinking about how he was the exiled criminal. He left Egypt,
Yeah.
but then he has to come back and talk about morality to the and because the Egyptians, probably the Musa stuff,
Yeah.
he was that of an exiled criminal.
Yeah.
He said, how are you going to
Yeah, and I'm sure they maligned him to no degree after he left. Terrorist, I'm using today's words, but whatever, this guy's a killer. This is what he's the Bani Israel, maybe they're once these enslaved class, you see how they are, we gave him the best and this is what he did. He turned against us and killed the Egyptians, and this is what, all these things. And that's why he says, him and his brother both say, إِنَّا نَخَافُ أَن يَفْرُطَ عَلَيْنَا أَوْ أَن يَطْغَى. That we are afraid, again they use fear, him and Harun say this, that they will that we won't be credible, that they won't believe us. We don't have credibility. I killed somebody. You want me to go there and say, be good and let these people go and all that? I killed somebody. And that's exactly what Firawn does say. He said, you're coming here to do this? You repaid my favor by killing somebody, he said. That's what he says. Now Musa he flips it on him and he says, oh, so you are recounting, so the way you favored me is by enslaving my entire people, by enslaving the entire people. He's saying what kind of favor is that? So he tries to use some logic there, but the point is, yes, how do you have a moral message if you have done things that are wrong in your past? Because that's all of us. We want to have a moral message, we want to stand for something truth, but nobody's above doing something wrong. And the first tactic that happens, as you see in politics, people immediately go to undercut you by not talking about what you're talking about, but by attacking your character and credibility. And he had to figure out what he's going to do about that. So there's that. Yeah, what else? What other episodes in his life that are interesting and funky? Yeah.
I was thinking about how when he arrived to Midian,
Yeah.
he helped those young women out
Yeah.
with the sheep.
Yeah.
Despite him being exhausted and
Yeah.
feeling guilty
Yeah.
about what he did,
Yeah.
he was still moving and trying to do good.
Yeah. No, his whole episode with the two daughters of what may be potentially Shu'aib alayhi salam, and how he helps them, and the kind of very beautiful, mysterious, intriguing interaction between them, and a type of romance, if you will, and the father and getting married and him praying for anything good, and it comes in the form of marriage and all that, and the way Allah describes that with so many layers and beauty to it. I know when I was young, I don't know how it is amongst women, but certainly I feel like a lot of young men resonate with that story. It's you go there, you do something chivalrous, and not because you're trying to look good, but just because it's the right thing, and then somehow all these beautiful things come out of it, but there's some interesting interplay, and there's modesty, because he interacts with her and he speaks with her, he sees an issue, and he kind of, his sense of hey, this is not right, somebody's got to do something about this, And that somebody is me. That was Musa alayhi salam. So immediately he sees these women that are trying to have, they can't water their sheep, and it's like a whole mess over there. The men are all jostling. So he goes to them and says, what's the problem? And they immediately are like, our father's old and these people are watering their sheep and we can't get to the water. So then he helps them out immediately, and then he just kind of goes back and sits in the shade and then makes this dua to Allah. Oh Allah, I'm in need of deep, I'm a faqir. Which, all these verses, by the way, Musa alayhi salam, there's a very spiritual meanings to it, there's very worldly meanings to it, there's kind of like leadership and management meanings to it. But like faqir, he says, Inni bima anzalta alayya min khayrin faqir. Like this should be our orientation with Allah, that I am a faqir, like I am just in desperate need of any good. That's what Musa alayhi salam says, from you Allah. And so Allah, and then these two, one of the two women comes back, walking. She says, "Tamshi ala istihya." Like she's walking in a way that seeks to be modest, which itself is a beautiful way of describing it. Allah doesn't say she is modest or this, or like she dressed like this or walked like this. It describes more an attitude. It's like walking in a way that seeks to be modest, which is leaving so much room for what that means, because seeking to be modest is more like your state of mind as opposed to an always same set of rules without regard to time and place and need. But if you're seeking to be modest, then it can mean different things at different time. And in this case, it meant him helping her, or going back, her coming back and saying, hey, my dad wants to see you. We're not going to go on this long walk to get there through God knows where, alone, just me and you. But she was seeking modesty. And so that means there's room for that to happen in an appropriate way. And then he goes and, there's no confirmed narrations about this, but some scholars taking from other stories, even though there's no like confirmed hadith about it, say the way it happened, Musa alayhi salam walked in front of her and she would direct the way by kind of, I don't know, some say throwing pebbles in the right direction. Maybe it happened that way and maybe it didn't. But the point is, it's a whole, there's beauty to that story of them kind of, and then when she goes at home, when the two daughters bring him there, and then their father says, okay, tell me your story. And so Musa alayhi salam tells them everything about like what happened, and I was this and that, and I killed a person and I ran away. And now imagine you were like this father with his two daughters, and you find this like person, yes, he helped your daughters out, but he's on the run from the Pharaoh, having murdered some big shot over there. Do you want to take that person into your house and bring trouble to your, quiet little life? So you don't think about all that, so one, Musa Hassan was brave to reveal all that. You show up somewhere, is the first thing you're going to say, yeah, I'm running, I'm fleeing from Pharaoh and his armies and I killed somebody there. So please help me. Yes, no. You're going to be like, I'm just kind of poor, I'm miskeen, just help me, I need some food, I need a place to say I could work. You're going to try to hide the scary stuff. But Musa alayhi salam, so just thinking about all that and thinking about, him recognizing his honesty, he said, you're safe here now. You don't have to worry about him, because he sees kind of his inner worth and what he stands for. And then one of the daughters chimes up, she can't help herself. She's like, oh father, like employ him, because there's no better person to employ than someone who is strong and someone who's trustworthy. Qawiyun Ameen, right? Which is very interesting. It stands for like Qawi, if you're strong, that's like it covers a lot of things. It means you're capable. It means you have like skills. It's stuff you can do, right? It speaks to your competence, to your skill set, which could be physical strength. It could be like skills that you've learned. He's saying he's a strong guy. He's strong, and his amew, trustworthiness. Is that a physical skill set? No, that speaks to his character. He's like the best thing you can find is that someone who's very like competent and strong and all that, and someone who has integrity and good character. And one of those things is easier to get than the others, which is what? The skills are easier to get than the character, but the character is the more important thing than the skills. And they kind of recognized, actually, because in terms of his skills, they didn't say much, they just said he's strong. But amew is much deeper. Because at this point, Musa was just strong. He killed this guy, he moved the sheep. And so, Shu'aib alayhi salam sees that, but this person has deep character. What drives him is his character. He's like, I gotta fix things, I gotta do wrong. I'm not scared of, even if I'm scared, I'm gonna act on this and I'm gonna help this person. I don't know these local shepherds, and they might all get mad at me and like kill me that I help these women and get this. No, but he has character, and I can work with him and really help him flower to his potential. And also in this case, particularly as men, because Musa alayhi salam in there, she's recognizing that this is some good aspects, that you can find in a man, even though she's asking about employment. But you can read into it some more that she's into him. And so of course the father being very perceptive, of course he also likes Musa alayhi salam, but I'm sure he's responding to seeing that his daughter likes this person. But he can tell that this person is a good person. He said, I intend to marry one of my 2 daughters to you, which some say is to protect his daughter. Like he knew which daughter, but like he doesn't want to be like, yes, that one really likes you or something like that. But he's keeping her, things more nuanced. And so Musa alayhi salam said, so by the way, an aside here, what is I'll call it dowry, so to speak, that Musa alayhi salam's father-in-law to be asked from Musa alayhi salam here? Yeah.
I think it was like 10 years of labor.
Well, he required him to work. He said, work for me for 8 years, and 2 more if you want to be, if you want to be nice about it, and you can marry one of my daughters. So that's actually a pretty steep dowry. That's I don't know how much 8 or 10 years of salary comes out to, but thankfully there's no like fiqh ruling that you have to have 8 or 10 years of dowry. But the more important indication you can take from there that I read once is how valuable actually a good marriage is, and finding the right person and so forth. And Musa alayhi salam was wise enough even at that age to know and take that bargain that that it's so important to have this, that yes, I will work 8 years, 10 years. Some scholars say he worked 20 actually. Like he said, because he doubled it, it says, because he says, ayyama ajalain, and some interpreted that as he did it twice what Harun alayhi salam, Shu'aib alayhi salam asked. But the idea that you should be willing to invest and work hard to find the right, and I don't mean find the right as in be very picky. I meant that, the priority of getting married and and having a good family is very high, that we could see that the Prophet Musa alayhi salam is placing there. What other story in the story of Musa alayhi salam is kind of interesting? Who's his, go back to early life, say maybe.
When he was put in the basket?
Yeah, so the whole episode with the basket. Now, how did Bani Israel get to Egypt? Why were they enslaved in Egypt in the first place? How'd they end up there? Bani Israel, I mean, even we know that, even though they lost it, but they started out around Palestine and all of that. So how did they end up in Egypt? Nobody? Nobody? Okay. Ismail, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I think at that time of Yusuf Islam, there was a famine going on.
Yeah.
And I think because he was a minister, he welcomed his tribe and people into Egypt.
Yeah. So Bani Israel ended up in Egypt at the time of Yusuf alayhi salam. So Yusuf alayhi salam, the son of Yaqub alayhi salam, the son of Ishaq alayhi salam, the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam started out somewhere else, and he moved with one of his wives to what it is, Palestine, and he moved his other wife to where? Mecca. That's where Ismail alayhi salam grew up, and then the Arabs in the desert until Prophet Muhammad sallam. But then Ishaq alayhi salam was a prophet there, and then Yaqub alayhi salam was a prophet there, and then Yusuf alayhi salam. But then he ended up in the well, and then got sold into slavery, was bought by somebody in Egypt, by a nobleman. And so Yusuf alayhi salam's story has a lot of parallels with Musa alayhi salam's story. He ends up in Egypt, he's raised in the family of a nobleman or a pharaoh or an aziz, getting the best of resources. He gets thrown into jail, spends 8 or 10 years there, just like Musa alayhi salam, 8 or 10 years in the wilderness, and then comes to his mission. Though Yusuf alayhi salam ends up as the minister, like basically the second highest position in Egypt, and at that time he brings his parents and his 11 brothers. So then Yusuf alayhi salam and his 11 brothers are each of the start of the 12 tribes of Bani Israel. Bani Israel means the children of Israel. Who's Israel? Israel is Yaqub alayhi salam. That's another one of his names. Of Jacob's other name was Yaqub's name was Israel. Bani Israel is the 12 children of Israel, which is Yusuf alayhi salam and his 12 brothers. And they came to Egypt, and then they started having a lot of progeny, and they became quite big in Egypt. And what's interesting to me, I don't know much of the deep story of this, how they went from that high position, because they were up high, riding high in Egypt, to now by the time Musa alayhi salam comes, they are oppressed and a slave class and being killed. So it's very interesting how and why that happened. But anyhow, so that was just so you have the backstory of what the pre story is, and then he's born at that time, and he's as a baby. His mom is Firawn had heard of this prophecy, according to some. That's not a confirmed narration, but heard a prophecy that one of these boys one day will kill me, and so he used to be afraid and have many of the males killed. Others say he just was killing just in order to keep the children of Israel from having too many males and being too strong to mount like a rebellion, but whatever it was, or some combination thereof. And so then she put him in the tabut and all of that. So that story. But there's another related story there. Musa alayhi salam had how many moms? Two moms, yes. Who are his two moms? Yeah.
His wife and mother.
Yeah, so of course he had his own mom. And her own story, Allah highlights her story, by the way. It's a beautiful and painful story. And Allah, it has a lot of human emotion in it, the things she's navigating, we'll talk about in a second. And then his other mom is the mom who receives him in the palace and saves his life, essentially, right? I mean, he would have been found otherwise, and people would have been like, okay, I guess one of the children of Israel, put their baby in this boat so that he wouldn't get found and killed. But she was the wife of Firawn, and so she's the wife of like a tyrant and the worst guy. But what's her status? What's her name?
Asya.
Yeah, Asya. And what's her status? Yeah. I mean, her status is according to one of the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, is that she's one of the 4 best women or most complete women of all time. And even the Quran, Allah says in the Quran, ضرب مثلا امرأة لوط وامرأة فرعون. What's that verse? It's I'm trying to remember the start of that verse. But Allah, it says, we give to you as an example the wife of Lut and the wife of Firawn. Because Lut alayhi salam was a prophet, and his wife was someone who basically was a bad person. I mean, she rejected. She was supportive and wanting to go along with the deeds of her people. Meanwhile, the wife of Firawn is the opposite. And Allah says, we give her as an example to the people who believe. Allah held her up and said, take this woman as your example. All believers. It doesn't say this, she's an example for women. It says, take this example for all believers. And she says, إِذْ قَالَ رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. That the deepest part of her example is that she had this deep, close relationship with Allah. And the biggest thing she wanted is, she says, make me a house in your presence. Indak fil, she doesn't say, she doesn't say, in fact, I translated it wrong. Most people translate it wrong. She doesn't say, make me a house in Jannah. She said, make for me in your presence a house in Jannah. So she's like, make something, like make me close to you, Allah. Like in this world, she had the tribulation of being surrounded by something that probably just broke her heart every day. Like she's with the worst person in the world, for whatever reason, that's her lot in life. And so she does what good she can in her way. And she finds this baby there, and she's like, all right, I can at least exert some agency that I have here to say, no, let's not kill him. Let's take him as a son. Perhaps something good, it'll be a qurrata li wa lak. She says to Pharaoh, perhaps it'll be a coolness for our eyes and for yours. She's really trying to use, these nice arguments. And the scholars say, he said, maybe for you, but not for me. He says, though we don't know that, but that's doesn't say that in the Quran, but some scholars say that was his reaction, but he let her do that. And then, so if we ask, how did a person growing up, if you grow up, why did Musa become such a man of righteous sense of justice and so forth, growing up the way he did? It doesn't make sense. If you're growing up in the palace, in the lap of luxury with everything given to you, and you're gonna want to fight for the downtrodden? No, you're probably gonna be like, okay, my well-being depends on this system. You're not gonna go say, let me go wreck this all and risk it and fight this guy. So where's all that coming from? No human being is strong enough to grow up purely in that influence and then just on their own have this sense of belief, because all the words he's saying is believing words, right? Because he's praying to Allah, right after he kills that person accidentally, he makes a dua to Allah. He says, surely this is from the amal of shaitan, and and Allah, if because of the favors you've given upon me, I'm never gonna be a supporter of wrongdoing. He has all this going on in his mind. So he has a clear understanding of his aqidah and tawheed. He has a relationship with Allah. He has a sense of right and wrong, and just because he grew up, he says, you gave me so many favors. So he's recognizing that I got everything made, but I'm not going to be a supporter, he says, of the oppressors. So he's very clear. We're very blind to our sense of, even though I'm not a big fan of this type of language, but that's my own thing. Like, we're very blind often to our privilege and our position and all these things. We like to look out and find somebody else who's more privileged than us and talk about their privilege and systemic this and that. But even just by living in America, we have so much things that we're benefiting of, but it's hard for us to point at the things that we're contributing to and a part of. And Musa alayhi salam was very cognizant and aware and struggling with that. He's like, Allah, you gave me so many favors, and I don't want to be supportive of these oppressors. But where was all that tarbiyah, that upbringing coming from? In all of that, the only person you can really point to, it must have been all Asya alayhi salam. She shaped the beginnings of a prophet. So she somehow found a way to have her life have so much meaning, even though on the face of it, it seems like, you know, if you're a good person, you're stuck in this messed up situation, what can you do? So she found some way to make such a big impact. And it also shows the importance of how much upbringing and parenting, and in this case particularly mothering, matters. Like, she gave him core values that got deep inside him, and that one influence was able to overcome so much other bad influence. And it kind of gives me, I mean, many times as a parent, I don't know, maybe some people might be parents here, maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4, I don't know. Parents here, I'm a fear type of guy. I'm often worried about this and that for my kids, and oh no, something like this. If I don't like, because you see so many wrong influences, stuff happens in school, and you're just worried that like my kid's gonna go off on the wrong track. And yeah, I'm not minimizing that worry, but I guess Allah is showing us here that everything was wrong in that circle around Musa, but his mom was right. And she was able to still matter so much. So it's a hopeful thing that like you have to trust in Allah, you have to do your best, and Asya did her best, and that made a Musa alayhi salam. And he didn't get a proper male influence till Shu'aib. And maybe that's why he didn't know how to like navigate and control his anger and this and that. You need somebody who's going to teach you all that, and sometimes it's hard for maybe a woman to teach that to like a man when he's getting to that young age and he's raging in his youthful zeal and all that. But so that was so her story with him and all that is a whole beautiful thing. What else is there in his story? What other interesting things happen in his story? I mean, there is this episode, we touched it on the beginning, but he would have these like incredibly spiritual experiences, right? His world has so much like mundane and politics, like you're fighting oppression, like Pharaoh, you got the politics. Bani Israel since the beginning were always so fractious, and like when he was leading the Bani Israel through the wilderness for 40 years. Well, he didn't think it would be 40 years. That whole thing, there's so many lessons. There's the story of the Baqarah, like the cow, and the golden calf before that, and trying to fight and get into the Holy Land, and them refusing to fight, and just managing a group of like just fractious people who just can't seem to arrive at their potential and keep falling short. That itself is so much going on. But throughout it all, Allah always takes him to the heights of like this very, very spiritual relationship with him. This first one happens here, right, when he has this epiphany with, here, then when Allah, the burning bush, basically. The next time is when he crosses, when's the next time?
Commandments or?
Yes, exactly. So but even before, I guess it was in the same time maybe. But basically, when he takes the Bani Israel away from Egypt, and he comes to the ocean, and they think it's over, and they're already doubting him. They're like, why we could have, now you're going to make us all drown. We could have just been slaves, and at least that's better than drowning. But then Musa alayhi salam says, no, my Lord will guide me, and he will never leave me. And then Allah guides him to use his staff, spreads the ocean, they drown. He gets to the other side, and Musa's like, all right. Okay, I think we're safe. And so he's having this like relief, and he runs to Allah. And Allah says, وَمَا أَعْجَلَكَ عَنْ قَوْمِكَ يَا Musa. Like, what made you like rush and away from your people and come to me, O Musa? And because Musa alayhi salam, so he's constantly learning. He has this relationship with Allah where Allah teaches him tough lessons. But Musa, Allah says, wait, why did you run? He's like, oh no, they're right. هُمْ أُولَٰئِ عَلَىٰ أَثَرِي وَعَجِلْتُ رَبِّكَ لِتَرْضَىٰ. Like he's Musa alayhi salam, as tough and political and activist type of a man he has this deeply like Sufi side to him, for lack of a better word. Don't take it the wrong way. What I mean is like he has this craving to just be like a monk, if you will, and to just go deep with Allah and have his life be about that. Like that's what he's like it feels like that's his ideal situation, and that's his refuge, because he runs when he first runs away to Madian, and he finds this mentor with Shu'aib alayhi salam. It's a number of very spiritual years, and Shu'aib alayhi salam probably then led him through the depths of having this relationship with Allah, and he's a shepherd. Being a shepherd, you see this analysis with prophets. All prophets were shepherds, because when you're a shepherd, you're out there for hours alone with the elements, the stars, the daylight. You have these sheep, and you're responsible for them. They're like these very naive, foolish creatures, as in they have like how they say like the survival instinct of people either say snail or sheep, but like sheep have very bad survival instinct. They're not built to defend themselves at all. Like they have no horns, they have nothing, they're not fast, they don't have teeth, they don't have anything. So the shepherd has to take care of them all. And so you develop care, you develop this, you have all this solitude, and if you do it right, you become an incredibly spiritual person. And so he has this thing with the bush. And then when Allah, by the way, when Allah gives him Allah gives him this climax where Allah then reveals himself to him directly and speaks to him. So this must be like such a spiritual experience to Musa alayhi salam. And Musa alayhi salam, loves that and wants his life to be about that. And then in that moment, Allah says to him that, اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. And Musa alayhi salam, he makes a dua that everybody knows. What's the dua Musa alayhi salam makes there? His first response when Allah first tells him this. Musa alayhi salam makes a dua. قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. People stop there. But there's a whole second part to the dua, which I want to talk about. But that dua, it says, "Oh Allah, expand for me my breast, and make easy for me my affair, this job, this mission, or whatever mission I have, and remove this impediment from my tongue," because he used to have, some say he had a lisp, some say he just didn't have a eloquent way of speaking, or he had a stutter, and all of that. يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي, so that they understand what I'm trying to say, like when he goes to Firawn and so forth. But he said, but then what he say? وَاجْعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِّنْ أَهْلِي هَارُونَ أَخِي, and then give me a wazir, like basically someone who I can really rely on from my family, my brother Harun akhi, ushdud bihi azri, and like make my strengthen my ability to do this with him. But then he says, so what? To what end? What is his goal? To the end of that dua, like he doesn't say, so that we will then be able to get the Bani Israel and do what you asked us to do and take them out and overcome what Pharaoh is doing. He doesn't say any of that. He said, كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا. He says, so that we can glorify you abundantly and remember you abundantly. Surely you're always watching us. So he's saying that like what I want in my life is just this deep personal relationship with you. And that's the thing that he keeps coming back to, that gives him the inner spiritual strength to keep handling the different situations he ends up in. And so when he makes them cross the ocean, ends up there, so he rushes back to Allah to have that spiritual experience. But Allah is showing that even there can be a temptation if you become too monkish, if you will, sorry for like, you know, probably not saying it in the right way, but like if you think like life is about just, if you know, being in the masjid and, you know, tarawih and all that, and you might do it wrong, so to speak, as in Allah says to Musa alayhi salam, not that there's a problem that you came to me, but he said, in this situation you abandoned your people too quickly. Like you can't just leave them for like 40 days, you know, a long time, and they just came out of the situation, they're still like in an enslaved mentality and they're not set up, and you just left them with Harun, you think it's all going to be okay. It's like no, you can't go to your, now he's saying like sometimes your spiritual thing can be a crutch. It's like your comfort zone, you're kind of actually like running away and you're not. So he says, إنا قد فتنا قومك من بعدك وأضلهم السامري, that I have tested your people, you know, while they're away from you, and the Samaritan has led them astray. And so he rushes back and he's angry and like, well, how could you guys, you know? So the point is though, there's an interesting balance Allah is teaching us, that life is this kind of weaving between making sure you have a deep spiritual relationship with Allah and realizing that that's the only thing that's real and that's your deep spiritual fuel. And if you don't have that, anything you're trying to do in this world, either you'll end up cutting corners and, you know, making moral compromises. How to not fear and not grieve, we can have much more peace. And then of course when you end up in Jannah, Allah is saying that there's no anxiety and no fear, and you are truly like you know, you're truly present. Now in modern times people realize time, right? Yeah. Well, so we'll end in like a minute. So basically the big point is here that all this stuff we learn about now, mindfulness and, you know, be present, and because if you're not present then you're caught in the past and the future, and so this Allah is actually, you know, kind of teaching that, and you really can't get at that until you have that spiritual understanding of Allah being in control. And so Allah returns, but then Allah still, He says He returns Musa alayhi salam to the mom so that she would have comfort, basically. So Allah has this relationship with her, where Allah's reason for returning Musa alayhi salam was not to like protect him, and because he was going to be with Asiya, but Allah has this relationship of love with the mom of Musa alayhi salam, and as a way to give her this relief, even though she had overcome her thing. And then Surah Kahf is the only place where it talks about the whole long story with Al-Khidr, which, by the way, some people say in Star Wars, Yoda, the Al-Khidr, which also means the green one, Al-Khidr, Yoda is green and he has this weird wise. Some people actually say that like they somehow took inspiration from that story and his descriptive green thing. But anyway, so Surah Kahf, Yeah, those I would say the three main, but then it's spread out in many, many places. But those three main ones. One big story we didn't mention, by the way, which is two other big stories, which I won't go into detail, is his whole thing with Qarun. Qarun, like dig down, and he was the richest man basically in Egypt, but he was from the Bani Israel, and so there's a very whole interesting story that happened with him. And the other flip side of it is there's someone way high up in the family of Pharaoh who believed in Prophet Musa and kept his iman secret, and how that whole story, I'm fascinated by him. Because Musa, the whole thing is happening, and then suddenly he starts speaking up, he starts arguing, but the whole time doesn't say he's Muslim, it doesn't say that he is Muslim, that he believes in Musa alayhi salam, and what's going to happen to him and so forth. So his stories were interesting, and then he starts talking about Prophet Yusuf, which is amazing. He says, remember when Yusuf came and told us about this and this. And then after he died, we thought like no prophet would ever come. And that's the only time we ever learned that Yusuf alayhi salam actually also used to do da'wah. Because I used to want, in Surah Yusuf, all this thing about Surah Yusuf, never once does it mention that Yusuf alayhi salam invited Egyptians to Islam, other than 2 people in jail who may not have been Egyptians. But once he became in a position of power, I used to wonder, like, okay, now you've made it. Like, are you gonna, did he talk about Allah then? But this man tells us that actually Yusuf alayhi salam did call, but I guess the Egyptians never believed until Prophet Muhammad's time. So, or not even, Amr ibn al-As and that time. But okay, so I said we'll take one more question, even though I go on to that. One more? There's a question? No? Alright. But yeah, no, Musa alayhi salam, definitely, I think we should reflect more on it and talk about it more, but it's a very, very layered story.